Lightning flashes and thunder cracks from the storm clouds that have gathered above Greennest. The ominous shape flying in the clouds is a constant reminder that things are not right. The adventurers make the short, couple-mile run to the town. As they reach it, they find it in chaos. Robed figures are smashing windows and grabbing whatever they can find inside. Small, lizard, dragon-like creatures are scurrying about and chittering to themselves as they hoard whatever they can get their hands on that their more larger compatriots have been taken from them. Greennest is under siege, and it's being ransacked. So that's the opening to the Hoard of the Dragon Queen that I portrayed to my players as they approached. From the other video, Grom merchant, the Dwarven merchant who had hired them to bring them to to get them to Greennest for all their various reasons, which we'll get to eventually, probably from their backstories, had besieged them to go forth into the town, save his family, and find out what's going on, while Grom and the rest of the merchant caravan tucked away safely off the trail. So the adventurers reached. Sidebar, my players, when we were setting this up and talking about how we wanted to play this, they had seen from some of the other games that I'd run that I used a lot of miniatures and placement. So they had, and about half my players had expressed that they wanted to play that kind of game. They'd never gotten a chance to play D&D that way. They've usually played Theater of the Mind style, or if they did do kind of tactical combat, it was less organized and more, skittles and dragon droppings and other stuff to represent battlefields that are drawn out in the carpet, which is fine, and I've done those before and had a grand old time. I've got some wonderful stories of when I played Werewolf for years, where the gentleman who I played Werewolf at, he had these collection of the 7-Up spots, if you remember them, and we would have huge battles with 7-Up spots representing all of the Banes and the mages and vampires and whatnot, so we were fighting as vampires. So whatever you need to use to represent the battle, go for it. But they had seen the fact that I had some models, and I have a background in wargaming from my days back when I could afford Game Sweatshop games. So we did that, and so I really wanted to make sure that I put that out there. So I went on and I designed the buildings, which I'm going to throw some pictures down, which I have a couple of them here. I got these off of Drive-Thru Games, and I'm blanking on the designer. I'll make sure I throw something down the doobly-doo for him. But these were a lot of fun. You just print them out on the cardstock, fold them up, glue them up. Myself and my daughter had a wonderful time building a bunch of these, which you'll see, even like little tiny shacks, which were just, we had a lot of fun doing these guys. And they're cardboard. And if I only use them this once, we had a good time. It took me like, even the big ones only took me like an hour to make and cut them out with the X-Acto knife. So I laid them out, and in the pictures you'll see that I'm probably going to put up now, you'll see that I had 3x3 insulation sheets of foam that I have covered in green felt, and we used those to set the map up. And so I had 2 of them. It was 3x6 across the center of the table, up on a little bit of a ledge to allow everybody, because I have a standard dining room table, and that needs a lot. Takes up a lot of space when you put a 3x6 mat in the middle of it. So I wanted to have some space for the players to stick their dice trays and everything underneath a little bit, so people got some space. And I laid out the town for them, and the way we ran it as we went through was to have them move across. Since they got across one whole panel and onto the second panel, I picked that one up and moved it to where the other one was, and then moved the one they had to in front of them and rearranged the buildings on it. So they just kind of had this constant trove as they went through it, which I thought worked really well. So if you want, you can get the cardboard cutouts. We did miniatures. I bought a bunch of Cultist miniatures, which actually, if you want to hear about those, I found a really good company that made Cultist miniatures. And funny story, I think I've pretty much bought out every package of the WizKids Kobolds in the Kalamazoo area. So anyway, I got tons of Kobolds, tons of Cultists, and I ran them through it. So the first thing they come across when they enter Greennest after making the trek down, is I have them all place their marching order, get their miniatures in place, and as they enter. And I decided that I was going to have them run through. If you read the book, in the source book, they say that you should have some random encounters, and they give you that information, and then immediately go into the fact that one of the first things you should do is have them come across a family, which was awesome. And so I wanted them to have a little bit, so don't critique me too much here. But I made them go through about 2 different random encounters of cultists and kobolds that were ransacking the houses, and they did a really good job of dispatching them relatively quickly. I'm actually having a note from the previous. I had everybody start at level 3, so even though this is like a level 1 encounter, they kind of felt kind of godlike, and I thought that was a nice way to start them off a little bit. I kind of upped it a little bit, so every time I rolled for the encounter, I added 2. So like if I rolled, they were only supposed to be like 4 cultists, they got 6, that kind of thing. So that was really fun, and so they fought off the first round of cultists and kobolds, and as they're making their way through Greennest, and then they come across Leona Swift, who comes running out with her family, being chased by almost a dozen kobolds. And so they have, and you can see pictures here. Now this is where I want to give some maybe props to one of the players, playing our gnome ranger with her beast companion of Walnut, the dire raccoon. She ended up high on the initiative, and so Leona had run out with her family and then stopped and turned to face the kobolds, protecting her family, daggers drawn, ready to fight. At this point, Walnut is sent to act as a barricade and to protect the children, which I thought was awesome. I did make them make some rolls, and so the children were afraid of this giant raccoon coming at them, but the parents kind of saw the intentions of the raccoon to act as a giant shield. To give you an idea, the miniatures actually are pretty close to it, so if you picture the raccoon we're using, Walnut the raccoon stands horse's height, but twice as wide. It is a big trash panda of a raccoon. To give you an idea, the common thing is that he wears leather armor, and on the back of his shoulders, in his leather armor, is actually embedded some saddle-like grooves to make him a little easier to sit on. And Melanie, his companion, rides him almost everywhere. That kind of gets around the fact that a gnome only has like a 25-foot speed, and everybody else has got like 30 or more. The monk, let's just not even talk about him. So they protect the kids. They're fighting their way through. They save the kids. They wipe them out. No point of order, by the way. Rosalind cast Spike Growth, which I thought was, okay, cool. She cast Spike Growth on a bunch of the kobolds. And I didn't quite think this through, though, because kobolds don't have that much HP. Really low, actually. And so Spike Growth is, like 1d4 plus something damage as you run through it. Yeah, I didn't think that one through, and the kobolds weren't just running out of the briar patch that they'd been cast on, and half of them died. So, good call on Rosalind. Bad call for the kobolds, but I kind of thought it made it worse, because the kobolds are kind of dumb. That's why I'm playing them anyway. They're not smart. They are followers. And so, they wipe them out. Leanne gives them the mission, the fact that, thank you, but the only safe place, and I don't do female voices very well, so I tried, but, thank you very much, but we need to move forward, and the only safest place we have is in the keep. And at first, actually, the funny part is the party didn't want to do that. There was kind of some dissent there. Half of them wanted to keep running around and finding and protecting and see what else. They didn't want to go to the keep right away. But I was able to convince them that, or at least the end switch was able to convince them that it's better off that we go to the keep. We have to go. So they go off to the keep. They make their way. At this point, Walnut is actually carrying all of the children and Melanie on his back, which is, I think, kind of awesome. I don't know anybody else who's ever run this campaign that has had the children escorted into the keep riding on the back of a giant raccoon. So throughout this, though, as they're fighting their way through a couple of more, we have the rogue and the monk kind of playing outside ring, keeping an eye on the buildings and being on the outside of things. So you have Remy the rogue, and you have Lutao, the monk, kind of being sneaky on the sides. At this point, though, they've decided that the rest of the party is just going to stay clumped up together to protect the family and fight around them, kind of allowing anybody who had to come out, instead of like sneaking next to the house that might have somebody in it, because that's where I've had them coming out of, the cultists and the kobolds are pouring out of the houses or coming from around the houses. They didn't want to be stopped. They didn't want to be like just turn a corner and go, cultist! So they want to be in the middle of the road. So they all stayed together kind of as a clump, but then using the 2 sneaky high dex characters on the outside to play, peer around corners and clear the way and see what's going on. At this point, I end up actually rolling really high, and they end up with one of the largest encounters that I could get. I think it ended up being something like 6 cultists and like maybe 8 or 10 kobolds that come around the corner, and the party stops. At this point, the party's a little far back. They've got the scouts playing lead, and they roll. And they notice the fact that the cultists at this point, this large group carrying large sacks and everything, heading their way towards, across the map at this point, doesn't attack them. And I give them credit. They argued over this. The party argued, and I kind of pushed them to make a decision quickly because I had them still running constant combat at this point. They all decided to play it safe and kind of do the whole, nod to the kobolds and the cultists as they went past, and managed to bluff their way past them. So the largest group that I rolled, they ended up actually just letting walk past as they were asking, like, where's what houses still needed to be ransacked or where they had ransacked. My apologies. I have bad allergies. So bypass that. Thought that was actually really good. I thought it was going to be a great combat though, but I'm kind of impressed that they decided to play it easy and play it safe and allow this huge group to walk past. They continued on at this point. I decided that they were getting close. They went through a few more combats. They're fighting and protecting the kids' walnuts, keeping them back. At this point, the druid, Rosalind, decides that she's going to use her beast shape for the first time, or wild shape, beast shape. Yeah, well, same thing, you get the idea. And decides she's going to turn into a giant spider. And her theory of this is she turns into a giant spider and then charges a kobold during one of the other engagements, and at this point tries to wrap them up. And granted, there's no rules for it, and there's nothing that says that giant wolf spiders can do this, but I said, what the heck, because she's a brand new player, and she said I wanted to web them and, cocoon them and make them, and capture this kobold for information, which is great. And so, you know what, sure. I let her, they ran up, she knocked the kobold down, she started spinning web around it, and they proceeded to interrogate this kobold, which didn't get them a lot of information. It's a kobold. So they interrogate, they get a little bit of information about, the wagons and where they're dumping all of the loot for the, she-dragon that they're doing. At this point, they do the interrogation, they get some information, they knock the kobold out, and they keep going. I decided this is the point where I really should probably press them a little bit further, so I tell them that there is now, some people have found the bodies. They didn't bother to hide at this point. Behind them, there seems to be a larger massing of cultists that are coming forward to them, and they force themselves towards the keep. The keep is in the distance, they can see it. They do find the house that Garam mentioned, but they are unable to investigate because there is a large mass of cultists and kobolds that are coming up behind them. Now that they've seen somebody's been fighting back, and now they're all searching for these fighters. Whoever's been fighting back and actually killing the cultists as opposed to the townsfolk and the guards, which kind of rolled over and played, possum. So they, at this point, unfortunately, they had to bypass Grom's house and run into the keep. They make it in. The way I described the keep to them is knowing some of the history and having a lot more background, I took this as the size of Greennest would not have as big of a keep as they kind of showed. So to me, think of it more like a giant armored mini castle. So not really a courtyard, but it actually is just one giant building that's really heavily reinforced. So basically an armored or stone communal building. That's kind of how I described it, with one parapet for watching over the city, or over the town. I keep calling it a city. It's not it's a town. The town of Greennest, sorry. If I say city, I apologize. It's a town. So, town of Greennest, they run in, they do this. Now, by the way, something that that the players had already gotten used to, but I kind of keep in mind is raccoons that are that big are not normal. So here comes the party running in. Mind you, at this point, you've got a monk, you have a rogue, you have the family on either side of the giant raccoon that is coming charging in. Melanie at the lead on his shoulders of Walnut. And let's see who else was. At this point, you have a half-orc barbarian that comes charging through the door, and another robed figure that has been kind of keeping herself to herself a little bit. They come charging in, as well as a giant wolf spider. So, yeah, the townsfolk half of them freaked out and started running out. The guards were the only reason I allowed them in, because the guards saw them fighting cultists and kobolds as they came in. When they approached the keep, they actually fought off some to get in to clear the path. So the guards all saw that they were doing good, allowed them in. But when a giant raccoon comes crashing to your front door into a common room, yeah, there was some panic in the streets. But the kids, actually, as funny as it sounds, Melanie decided to try and make it so that the kids showed that the Walnut was fine. And so the Walnut took the kids off to one side and nestled in with the family, and suddenly became an oddity that some townsfolk were like, I don't know about this giant creature, and the other ones are coming over and petting. And then the giant wolf spider turned back into a dwarf, which of course startled the daylights out of Grom's family, who they found safe and sound inside of the keep. At this point is when the adventurers are told that the guard tells them the governor would love to talk with them, and so they make their way up to the top of the parapet, where I describe the governor, Nighthill, beaten, arm in a sling, bruised up like he'd actually tried for a fight, and has gotten very basic medical attention. And that is where he proceeds to lay out. They talk about he asks where they came from. Here's about the trade caravan. It actually made it. It's still safe. He was actually very happy to hear that, bringing supplies to the town, and making and happy that they know at least it's some good news. And all of this raid and all of this fighting and losing people and losing property and watching his town get ransacked from this parapet, to know that the trade caravan is safe, made him very happy. And he proceeds to express his gratitude. He actually saw them fighting their way in. It's kind of hard to miss a giant raccoon even in the dusk of this, but in the cracks of the storm and lightning, he was able to actually see them come in. At this point, Governor asks his age-old favor of every adventurer, that he needs their help. And he points out on either side of the town, and he points off down the one side of the stream, the mill, where there's a couple of kobolds and cultists who looks like they're trying to set fire to it or destroy it in some fashion. And he looks down the other side to where the temple is, and points out that the temple has been surrounded by cultists and kobolds, and they're trying to break in. And he had been told that many of the local villagers close to the temple had sought refuge in the temple. And he beseeches the adventurers to take on one of these tasks. The other task is going to be taken on by his own special operative. And this is a point where I decided that I came across the homebrew race of the Felice, the cats. That if you've been on Reddit, that's where I found it, and I said, "Oh my gosh, it's cats! It's not like Triptoxy, right, where it's humanoid. No, we're talking like cats, like the size of a large cat, but just walks on its hind leg. It's Puss in Boots from Shrek, all right? Where can you go wrong? I love this idea. So I created a character, Lady Grey. Lady Grey is a female Felix who is a fighter, just straight up, honest-to-God fighter, and she has been the governor's, whereas the Ebstein has been the dwarf has been his right hand. This is his left. She goes out and takes care of errands for him, runs around and takes care of things he go to. I find this would be a great character to introduce, and add a couple more NPCs that are more my flair, my take on things. You can't tell me that a governor is not going to have more than just one good guy and a bunch of guards, right? He's got other friends. So, boom, we got a Phylaxi. So the Phylaxi, Lady Grey, is going to take whatever task the adventurers don't. She's going to take a few guards and take on the other one. At this point is where we actually called it. So, unfortunately, in our first game night, we did a lot of Session 0 stuff, so we hadn't a chance to get as much actual role-playing in. I'm all for Session 0s. I think they're great. They're a wonderful tool. Unfortunately, for Hoard of the Dragon Queen, when we were getting ready to run this, our Session 0 ended up as the time when we realized that we lost like half the people that were going to play with us. So I opened it back up, and that's how I ended up with 4 people saying to replace the 2 that dropped out, and ending up with the 6 to 7 people that we're going to have playing this game. It's going to be a lot of fun. So far, I think my players are having a lot of fun. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. I will put in the doobly-doo some comments direct to the Session 0 link, if nothing else. This will all be in the Hoard of the Dragon Queen campaign that I will be running in a playlist. So hopefully, if you want to watch everything, feel free on. And if you have any questions, shoot them at me, or you can always ask. So, with that, support. My one thing I'll say to support me. I designed a card game a while back for the Swords of Valour stuff that I do. You could always support me by buying that. That'd be great. I'm thinking about putting up a Patreon. I haven't decided yet or not. If you think people would actually do it, tell me, and I'll start one up. If not, then by all means, buy my game. That's the way you can help me out. And I'm working on some other stories. So, yeah, on to Session 2. And as soon as we get through Session 2, I will post it up here. As of the day I'm filming this, it's actually a Saturday afternoon or evening. I don't know. It's dark outside, but it's the fall in Michigan, so it's always dark. We play on Monday nights, so I'm hoping that on Tuesday nights I'll do the filming of the next campaign diary and be able to get them up on a weekly basis for you guys. So thanks again. I'm Haven the Hare. Thank you for watching, and may you make all of life saving throws.